Now we're cooking. Oh my God. I spent the last 5 minutes talking to myself as we started this stream and realized that the stream didn't pick up. So my next guest got to hear my whole intro speech, and I'm just going to come up with something new. So today we've got Michael Jordan. No, that's not today. No, sorry. Yeah, let me just say that my buddies at 5 Star Guitars have been incredibly supportive of this show. So before we get my guest on, I want to say 5 Star has been recognized by the North American Music Merchants as the vendor of the year. So they're the greatest music store, not only in North America, but the world. And since they're based here in Oregon, there's no sales tax. So you're going to save a ton of dough if you go to 5starguitars.com/allaccesslive and use this promo code right here, All Access 15. You're going to save 15% on all the products. And since there's no sales tax, you're going to save more money so that you can buy lessons from my next guest. Before I talk about him, let me tell you, this week I've got such an array of really cool guests. Tomorrow it's a rescheduled event for Kyle Baltus, metal drummer for 36 Crazy Fists and the Loyal Order. He's been in Falling Closer in the past, and I know that you're gonna love him. On Thursday, Charlie Wadhams, son of Bill Wadhams from Animotion, but he's made a name in and of himself for his songwriting. He's done music for Walk Hard, The Dewey Cox Story, and a handful of other movies. He's an LA born and bred cat who has really shaken up the indie music scene in California, and I'm excited to play his new stuff. My next guest, let me just tell you a tiny bit about him. But I'm going to set the stage here and tell you a little bit. I'm going to give you an analogy. Pretend that you've gotten to have coffee. You've gone out with a buddy of yours maybe, and you've gotten to know this guy as a person. And you can see that as a human, this guy is such a great dude. And he's talked about playing basketball. So you say, man, I love basketball. We got to get together and play a pickup game sometime. So after lunches and hanging out, you show up on the court. Dude dunks in your face. Then he hits from outside the three. And you realize that your buddy Mike that you've been talking to is Michael Jordan. This cat is beyond world class. And you realize that you've been hanging out with somebody that not only is a phenom, but an incredible human being. That's like my next guest. Damian Erskine is not only a world-class bassist, he's the Michael Jordan of bass guitar. And he's right here, man. And I'm excited to share him with you. So let me bring him in, my buddy.
Oh, stop.
How are you in the basketball court, man? Are you pretty good?
I am awful.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a good thing you're a badass bass player, right? I realized that Claudia Odenthal, she's here from Germany. She doesn't like it when I speak this fast. She's been working on her English, but I know that she would appreciate getting to hear some of your new music. So we're going to talk about all this stuff. You got a brand new record that just came out in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
You did a live stream, and you've been doing some live concerts even when there's no touring going on.
A little bit, as much as I can.
I miss being on stage with you, but like being on the basketball court with Michael Jordan, I can't hang, man. So I remember the first gig that we did with Eddie Martinez, and I never got to see you before, right? I certainly knew your name, and we hopped on stage, and I remember stopping going, okay, this is how it's done. And Eddie, it's the same thing with Eddie, man. You guys, it was, it was.
I was going to say both of you guys, man, that band was so good. It was like 2 notes in. I'm like, oh, all right. I see what we're doing.
And Ramsey Embick, man.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah. It was, I think, as much fun to watch and listen to you guys as it was to play behind you. But man, you've got a lot of miles under your belt, though, man. I was looking through the records you've done. You've already got 4 now.
4 of my own.
Yeah. And I guess, when I looked through your history, musicians kind of know this pedigree, but maybe the non-musicians, they might not get the connection to like your early days. I think you're hearing about your first concert. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, technically my first concert, I was 2 weeks old and went to a Weather Report concert because my uncle Peter Erskine played in Weather Report. And actually, it goes back beyond that. My dad, my biological father, was the bass player in the Stan Kenton Orchestra. And so that's how it all came together. My uncle, that was my uncle's first real gig. He left school to go play with Stan. then Maynard Ferguson, then Weather Report. My mom married the bass player, silly her.
Oh no.
But yeah, my whole youth growing up was basically going to Weather Report concerts, and then after Weather Report, seeing Peter play in New York with, Jaco and everybody. My grandfather, Peter's father, was a complete jazz freak, and just loved nothing more than throwing me in the car and driving me up. And back then, you could just bring a kid into the bar. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. So these were bar gigs that you were actually like going in to see?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, we went to certainly Weather Report or Steps Ahead or one of those groups was playing at a university or something somewhere. We do that too. But my grandfather's favorite spot was a place called 7th Avenue South, which was owned by the Brecker brothers.
Oh yeah.
In the Village, and that was the spot.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I bet your grandfather knew like Michael Brecker, like, you probably grew up with these cats, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was just a little thing. But yeah, my grandfather knew all the guys, and I have distinct memories of him walking me into the green room, and if it smelled a little funny, walking me right back out.
Part of the gig, man. Yeah. I've certainly been there with my kids, and you try to explain to them at an early age. Yeah. Sometimes, people have different ways to get ready for the gig, and but, and especially then, right? You were born early 70s, right? So
early 70s, yeah. So this is all late 70s, early 80s.
Speaking of little thing, dude, you've become a little thing, man. I'm sorry to talk about appearances, but I'm feeling even more like out of place on the court here, man. You've lost a considerable amount of weight.
2019 was the year I turned it all around. I lost 86 pounds in 10 months or so.
Oh, that's certainly an episode in and of itself. But you want to talk about what sort of like brought that on first of all, and then how you did it?
I was getting to the point where every time I saw a picture of myself, I was stunned. I didn't feel nearly as big as I was. And then actually the Christmas 2018, my wife and I decided, let's just get out of town for New Year's. I didn't have a New Year's gig. Both of our schedules were light. And we used some miles I had accumulated and got an Airbnb in Baja and just went to Mexico for a couple of weeks over Christmas and New Year's.
Nice.
And I had become so klutzy. I took a spill. It was the third spill I had taken in the third country. That year, I stepped off a curb wrong and just bit it and chipped a bone in my ankle, and I was just feeling so klutzy, and I was getting so heavy that if something happened, I could no longer save myself. And I just got home, and I had the big boot on my leg, and I thought, this is enough. Like, I'm already not sleeping well because my belly's getting too big. Everything hurt. So it was time. I just made the decision and completely changed my diet, a little bit at a time, not overnight, but figured out what worked and what didn't for me. Started walking, riding a bike. At first, I got a little recumbent exercise bike so I could at least do something while I was laid up. But then once I healed up a little more, started walking a lot and didn't go crazy. Not doing burpees till I puked at the gym or anything. Just eating clean and trying to exercise more. Not eating at night after gigs was the toughest thing. But
okay, man. As a musician, dude, that's the downfall for me, especially if you're on the road, right? It's so hard. Do you have a post-gig ritual now since you've turned your health around?
Not really. And actually I found it easier on the road because I was so conscious of the kind of food I was putting in my body that usually there are no good options unless you've planned for them. Right. And so it was easier just to like kind of teach myself how to go to bed a little bit hungry and work it out in the morning. But at home, if I'm starving, if I'm so uncomfortable I can't fall asleep, I'll have a banana and a handful of nuts instead of half a pizza.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Before you changed your diet, what was your post-gig ritual?
It was pretty much eat until I fell asleep. Yeah.
Especially if you're on the road, right? Whatever you could get from the green room or take back to the hotel.
Yeah, exactly. Or just, whatever's near the hotel. If there's, whether it's an Arby's or a gas station, just load up on nuts and fried foods and whatever, chicken strips, and call it a day.
Gas station deli chicken strips, man. That's the downfall of a lot of people I know. But going into the pandemic, having changed your health, I'll bet it was really nice to be able to have sort of that ritual already planned out, right? So you've got your walks already planned out, because I know you're a walker. I mean, you were taking a walk just before we did this, and
Yeah.
I felt, for me, not even just so much for the physical part, but for the mental. I try to get out in the woods every day with my dog, right? Do you have an animal?
Not anymore. Last man standing left us a couple years back, but
Oh man, I'm sorry. Like, for me, my pug is in fact, he's looking at me right now. He's pissed because we haven't hit it, and it's sunny here, a remarkable sunny day in Portland. But
yeah,
I got to get out and do that, and I know that I feel better physically, I feel better mentally, and then it makes you want to eat better too, right? Because you've got the endorphins going, and I'm guessing that you're not as klutzy anymore, right?
No, my balance is better, my strength is better, everything's better.
How about your playing?
My play, you know what's interesting? The only physical with my playing, people ask how did it affect your playing, and the only thing that was different was that my fretboard is my bass is no longer sitting on my belly, so my fretboard used to face me.
Okay. And now you have to look over your.
Now I have to look over.
You know what? For people that don't know you, and that's probably very few, you were never that big, dude. I mean, honestly, like you talk about having like this coffee table to put your bass on, but I don't ever remember you being that big, but
I think I carried it well. People were surprised at how much I actually weighed. I mean, I was 250.
Yeah. I'm pushing it. I could definitely use, less, I don't do the post gig pizzas, but peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that's my bad go-to.
Oh, dude. Yeah, me too. That was one of mine too.
Really? Yeah, man. Like you get all sorts of the payoffs in that, like get the sugar, get the peanuts, the peanut butter, like
sweets.
Yeah. God, man. Do you drink?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Cause for me too, I quit drinking about 8.5 years ago, about the time we were playing together, actually, but I noted that I started craving sweets more too, when I quit drinking too.
Interesting.
That sucks. Cause my post-gig ritual as a teenager, I would go. I grew up in Montana, right? So, played 4 or 5 nights a week at ski resorts, and on the way home, for years, man, it was Nestle's Quick Chocolate Milk. That was my go-to.
Yeah.
And then everybody else was partying, right? Everybody's drinking, but and then after I quit drinking again, I went back to the chocolate milk. And after a gig, it's like the best ever. We have some friends here that they rival it with chocolate milkshakes, but. There are much worse things, I guess, you could do to your body, in the music world. But
I spent years in the Econo line, and I'm pretty sure there was a point in my 20s where I pretty much lived off of Yoo-Hoos and Hot Pockets.
Yeah, that was. I think that both of my boys are in that mode right now. But how long have you been married?
I've been married 19 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Rather than make this like sort of one of those formal interview styles, man, talk to me a little bit just about because you've always been a musician. I mean, you've always been in the industry, but your wife, maybe talk about how you guys met and how she's handled. You've toured more, I think, over the last several years than you had before, right? It just kept growing and growing until the pandemic.
Yeah, every year was a little better than the last, and I was never on the road as much as some of my friends, but I always spent, I'd say, the past 5 years particularly was a solid third to half of my year.
Okay.
Out of town.
And so how'd you meet, first of all?
I was managing a coffee shop in Fairfax, California, and she popped her head in the window and said, "Are you hiring?" And I immediately thought, well, she's cute. Yeah, I'm hiring.
That wouldn't fly these days. You know that, right?
Wouldn't fly. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. So you hired her first and then dated her?
Yeah. Well, I was in a relationship at the time, so this was kind of one of those, appreciating from afar type of things. But as soon as that relationship ended, we had an obvious tension between us. And I pretty much just like walked from here to there and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And we've been, she asked me to marry her actually 3 months into our official dating.
Smart girl, man.
Got married about a year into our dating life. On paper, it should have been a disaster. She was the bartender at the local bar that I played at all the time, and small town. And But yeah, it's just worked, and we're doing great.
She's probably independent enough too, right? So that she gets the fact that you do this not only for fulfillment, but this is a nice career for you.
Yeah, well, the thing that people have talked to me in from different angles about how we've made it work so well and for so long, and especially when I'm out of town. And she actually does a lot of music production during the summer, so we're both just bouncing back and forth. And one of our biggest strengths is that we both operate equally as well independently as we do together. When we're apart, we're both only kids. We know how to take care of ourselves, and then we come back together. It's Team Erskine again, and everything's cool.
Team Erskine.
Yeah, so there's no insecurities, no nitpicking. We both accept each other for who they are. Nobody's trying to change anybody. It's just like full on acceptance, and we just groove.
You need one of those vlogging sites just for the couples, right? Where you can travel and say, this is how to do it. I see that Kenny Davis is out here. He's singing praise to Coco as well. So nice to see him here, man. I'm not surprised that my drummer buddies, him and Keith Parkhurst, all the drummers are here watching you. Speaking of, dude, not only you're this world-class bassist, but you also play wicked drums too.
I used to. I suck now.
Yeah, I would bet. I would bet a lot of it would come right back, man. Drums
was my main instrument. I started playing bass first, but only because my grandfather made me. I discovered drums on my own, so that was kind of like my thing, and I was completely self-taught, and I loved it. In fact, when I started going to Berklee in college, I was a drum major.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but I was a metal drummer.
What?
Yeah, I was a metal drummer, and I just felt so out of place in this jazz school. I thought, well, I always liked the bass too, and I just kind of gotten back into it. I quit for 7 years or so, and I thought, let me just switch over to bass. It makes more sense. Jazz, harmony, I'll play bass.
No.
And I haven't really played drums since I was 23. I just kind of fell in love with the bass, and I never really looked back, strangely.
That's unbelievable, man. That's sort of Eddie Van Halen, right? I mean, he started off as a drummer, and then he and his brother switched, and he realized this is his given gift, right? So...
Yeah.
But if you got into Berklee as a drummer, you had to have chops, man. Who was your sort of your biggest inspiration as a drummer? Besides your uncle.
Well, I didn't like jazz at the time, so
okay.
I liked him I appreciated him on a professional and personal level, but I was never into the music so much. My two main guys were Dave Lombardo and Gene Hoglan.
Oh wow! So you both Slayer guys, yeah, man.
Yeah.
God. Did you ever meet him?
Nope.
I'm interested to know what would happen if you and Lombardo sat down, had a conversation now. I met him a couple of times, and he's humbled now, I think. The last time I saw him, he'd, I think, being out of Slayer for a while, and he had kind of a punk band opening for Rob Halford.
Oh, wow.
Called Film, Philm. And yeah, he seemed less, I guess... pretentious, he was a little bit of a pretentious metal guy, because
he's the OG, man.
Yeah, that's right, man. And Gene slowly crept up as a metal guy, man. He didn't have the cred that Lombardo had, but he was a wicked drummer. And then all the drummers realized, okay, this, there's not just one, right?
Wow.
So I love the idea that you entered Berklee though, wanting to play metal drums. Was that the hope that you just end up in a metal band and tour the world?
Well, I mean, always. That was kind of in my plan. I always knew I was going to play music, and I always thought I was going to be a drummer. I wound up at Berklee. Mainly, I was planning on going to Oneonta State in upstate New York with a bunch of buddies of mine who I'd been in a band with since high school.
Okay.
And we moved there at the beginning of the summer, and we basically spent the summer partying so hard that I thought, I'm going to kill myself if I'm not going to get anything done. I got to get out of here. So I just kind of on a whim applied to Berklee real quick and got in. At the time, they weren't as selective. If you had it, if the check cashed, they'd let you come to class. So I got all the loans because the check wouldn't have cashed, and just started going to Berklee. I had no idea what I was doing. It was just it wasn't working for me. It didn't even really work for me on bass. I didn't understand things in an academic way. I came to understand things like that later,
okay.
But it's strangely enough, I graduated from music school, but I consider myself to be self-taught.
Wow. I think you've had so many influences, right? So the stuff that you've done, and then you've become an educator, you've become an author. And so rather than sort of become or having been an academic student of some of those teachers at Berklee, it seems like you just take a melting pot of all these different influences. I know your first bass lessons were Jaco, right, when you were 6 or 7.
Yeah, very, very, backstage, like showing me some finger exercises and different ways to play scales and stuff like that.
But you weren't, I guess you're 7, so you probably weren't really even understanding what jazz was at that point, right? It was just music.
Yeah, it was just music. Yeah, I mean, at the time, I was just kind of learning Duran Duran tunes and Michael Jackson tunes off the record player. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would have been a nice pairing for you and Batten to hook up back then, right? So,
right.
Hey, Jennifer, I know that you've done some gigs with Jennifer, just one-offs here in the area, and she, we did a handful of gigs together. The first gig that we did, my first gig with Jennifer, was the World Guitar Congress, right? So we were with John Schofield, Eric Johnson, and some cats, right? And it was kind of like sitting down at, showing up at the court and having guys like you there, all in the front row with their arms crossed. So I knew, okay, so I had to look at priorities for myself and look at where my position was in music, and I knew where my shortcomings were, but I also knew where I could kind of hold my own. Are there ever gigs that you can think of back in the day that were intimidating like that, where cats are up front and just,
good Lord. Yeah, I mean, every one of them, especially earlier on, because bass was my second instrument. I had played on and off since I was 6, but I never played bass with another human until college.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it was just something I did by myself in my room. My grandfather gave me stuff to practice, and I would practice it. So, and interestingly, like a large part of my musical life, up until I'd say somewhere in my 30s, I was a very fear-based player. I was always afraid of sucking, afraid of embarrassing myself, afraid of letting people down in the band, that kind of thing. And it was through all of those types of gigs where I kind of went into it almost kind of panicked, but then turned that into motivation to practice and learn, do as well as I could, that if I came out the other side unscathed, it kept giving me a little more confidence. Like, hey, maybe I can do this. I can do this. It took me till I was in my 30s until I actually believed it. But yeah, there were a lot of gigs like that. I did my biggest panic attack ever was after getting a call from a guy about doing a tour in Japan with the Jaco Pastorius Big Band.
Oh my God.
And by the way, it's going to be you and Richard Bona.
Oh man.
And so he said, are you available? Are you interested? And I said, absolutely. Hung up the phone. Oh, I was like, oh no. What have I done? I'm going to embarrass myself 2 shows a night. I'm going to embarrass myself twice a day for a solid week.
How much prep time did you get?
I had about a month or so.
All right.
And that was absolutely a situation where I turned that fear into motivation. And we had they were going to record they recorded all of the shows too. They turned it into a live CD. So we never knew which tunes we were going to play for a set. They had us just keep rotating the songs, so everybody got to approach them a couple of different times. So I had this bucket of music to learn, and I just ran every tune multiple times, 2 or 3 times a day. I just kept running the show every day up until I flew out. And lo and behold, by the time I got there, I was so comfortable with the music that I just had a blast.
Yeah. You didn't have to think about it anymore. It was like second nature.
Didn't have to think about it. And, there was a couple of things I had to kind of meditate on and realize. One was that they didn't hire me to be Jaco. They hired me to be me. And maybe to be the best version of me that there is. So I'll work my butt off to try and give them that. But as soon as I stopped feeling like I needed to be able to play the music like Jaco or Richard, and just focused on doing as good a job as I could with my own voice, then it started to, the sailing got smoother for me.
How old were you when that happened?
That was, I think that was maybe 2011-ish or so.
Oh, okay, so you already had your first record was already out.
And, yeah.
And you'd written, did you already have a book out by that point too?
I think I might have, I think my first Right Hand Drive book was out. Yeah, so I was in my late 30s.
when I think about you having panic attacks, I kind of picture you being 17. But the fact that you already had that stuff on your belt, and you had the wherewithal to kind of realize that, practice and running the show and getting it to be, subconscious without having to, because Christopher Brown, right, of course, man,
Yeah.
that you probably worked with in town.
Mm-hmm.
He was on last week. We talked about this a little bit about being able to stick the landing, right? When you got improvisational stuff, and you're I've seen, all these videos of like you and Tyrone, Tyrone Hendricks, wicked drummer, love his playing, and he's very, and Reinhardt, my God, man, you've done so much stuff with Reinhardt. All these drummers, I think, they approach listening, right? Drummers can really get in trouble if they're not listening. You're not sticking the landing because they're thinking about counting or they're thinking about arrangements. But if you're listening to where you're going, and as a former drummer too, I would think you probably think in both respects, right? You think as a drummer and also as a bass player, so that improv probably isn't as intimidating to you.
Well, the thing, rhythm is my first language. So the thing that really messed me up was harmony, and I worked very hard to try and get a better understanding of harmony. But yeah, sticking to landing, I mean, that's kind of the most important thing. And all of those drummers you mentioned are, it's not that they just have such great time and such great chops. It's that they're so compositional in their playing. You can hear when the chorus is coming up. You can hear when you're moving to the bridge. They are playing. They're listening to the band in the third person.
Right.
They're listening to the music as a whole and playing the music, not just thinking about chops and I got this lick I've been working on and here we go. Right. It's a different mindset. And you can always sense when there's, when a musician has tunnel vision and they're only listening to themselves versus respecting the music and playing the best version of the song they can.
I love hearing pros talk about that, right? Because you've been on stage and some of these pickup gigs, I'm not going to have you name any names, but Jennifer and I talk about that a lot too. She's had these amazing, huge gigs that she'll say, somebody gets added on last minute, and you could tell that person either hasn't done their homework, I'm probably guilty of that, big time, but or they just they are so sort of selfish in their playing that they're not thinking about the composition as a whole. They're not thinking about the experience that other people are having listening to it, and it's certainly, if you're the soloist, they're not thinking about complimenting what you're doing. I see a bunch of our friends there, mutual friends. Brian Harris is still blown away by the amount of weight you lost, which is great. And he's another friend that I'd love to have on the show, man, because he's one of those guys that is such a musical player.
Yeah.
As a keyboardist, man, he's one of my favorite guys to listen to, and I've never gotten a gig with him.
I've never not had a great time playing with Brian, and he's such a good hang too. He's such a sweet dude. But yeah, playing with him is always a joy. I see all kinds. I see my cousin Adam in here too, man.
It's a family reunion.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell Brian what you said before we got on camera. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
man, the really cool thing about the gigs that we did that I was most impressed by was that not only did you have this musicality about you and certainly the pedigree, but the hang is so cool. And I've talked a lot about this with other bands, other musicians, touring, being out on a bus, being in a van, flying, being around people. You can have all the chops in the world, right? But if you don't have the hang, which is equally 50% of the gig, right? Yeah. Then you're not going to get the call. You've had any situations like that, man, where you've been out and you realize, all right, this cat he's not thinking about the whole.
Yeah, there are absolutely some phenomenal players that I hope to never work with again. Just because they get, just because the presence gives me anxiety or it's so unenjoyable, and it affects the way you play.
Yeah.
You want to be having a shared experience with the musicians around you. And if you just kind of want to can't wait for that dude to go away or something, but absolutely. And you, like we were saying with the music too, I know some of the most incredible musicians on the planet that can't get over the proving themselves thing and get fired from great gigs because they're just overdoing it. They're just trying to show everybody how bad they are, and that's not what it's about.
It seems like insecurity, in a big way, right?
Oh yeah.
It's kind of a big truck syndrome, in a way. I mean, I certainly see it in the rock world all the time, right? You think about the shredder guitarists and, Swedish guitarists that I think of, the first person that comes to mind, when you've unleashed the fury.
Yeah.
How about inspirational players? Of course, you mentioned that you weren't a jazz guy growing up, so maybe tell you, and you said Hoagland and Lombardo were your drummer guys, but I love to know about like who inspired you, even if it's not musically. If there was somebody that you were growing up that you thought that person is, I want to be like that person, or even if if it's a person in the media or somebody that
Honestly, my Uncle Peter, the way he carries himself, he's got this amazing balance. He's quick with a joke. He can he's like, the hang is good with him. It's always funny. It's always good. It's always lighthearted. But he's also the consummate professional. When it's time to work, he communicates clearly. He works efficiently. He taught me so much, especially once I started touring with him. We had a trio for a while, and I've toured with him in a few different groups. And just observing how, and I got struck by this when I was a kid too, just watching him interact with different people, whether they were fans or the musicians on stage or the club owner or whoever. He was always clear, present, and articulate and fun at the same time. It was never, dry and bookish, and he was never just like too irresponsible in his partying. He just like struck this perfect balance, and he's such a good hang, and he's such a smart guy too, that he's always been kind of my inspiration for how to be. And he's the one who really kind of taught me how to put the music first. When we first started playing, I call it the art of reduction. I remember the first rehearsals we ever had together, and he would stop me and say, don't throw everything you have at this. Okay. Just leave a little bit. Leave them wanting a little bit more, and just play what needs to be there, but try not to play anything more than that for a while. And it really got me thinking about the music in a different way, and like really judging, when I'm going to play something, like, do I need to play this lick to connect this idea to this idea, or can I just let that note sit and articulate how I, in a musical way, a little more vocal way instead of a instead of a chop way. And it really, I noticed a little bit of a shift in my playing when I hear old recordings and recordings post, pre-PP and, well, both are PP, pre-Pete and post-Pete.
So tell me about the time, when that happened. Do you feel like if you went back, could you sort of pinpoint that time in your life when Peter mentioned that? Was it during the trio time?
Yeah, it was 2009.
Okay.
I had never played with him before that.
Really?
Yeah.
Not even for fun?
Nope. He had given me a couple of drum lessons, because when I was growing up and he lived in New York, I was a drummer.
Yeah.
Completely different style, so he would have me play a ride pattern. I'd be like, this is dumb, I don't. Let me show you this double bass drum thing I've been working. But, and later in life, our styles were so divergent. Even when I started getting into jazz, he's making these beautiful ECM records and piano trios, like high art in my mind. I thought, well, he'll always be Uncle Pete, but we'll never be making that kind of music together. But I was in town for the NAMM show, I think it was 2009, and he just called me out of the blue and said, hey, somebody just turned me on to this great piano player. I got offered a tour in South America, and I was thinking it might be nice to do an electric bass piano trio. Do you want to swing by the house and just, run a couple tunes with us, see how it feels? And I was like, well, yeah, duh. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And it was a great rehearsal, and it went really nicely. But there was a couple of moments where he would like stop me and ask me to approach something in a little bit of a different way. And, especially like I mentioned, that art of reduction. And through that process, the rehearsals leading up to the tour, that tour, and then maybe the first couple of tours especially, I learned a lot about what he's in my trying to focus on what he's looking for as a bass player. What it really boiled down to was just respect for the music.
Yeah.
and of course, good time and feel and everything like that too. But the respect for the music was paramount, and it really kind of slowly shifted the way I thought and approached playing.
I'm imagining that first rehearsal where you guys got together and just like shedded some stuff. Is the family connection so strong there? Did you feel this real, just this bond immediately with his playing?
Musically, no, probably mostly because I was just terrified.
Yeah.
In a lot of sense, it's interesting because our family's close. I mean, it was like Christmases, we're always together, all that kind of thing, and he was just always Uncle Pete. And it wasn't until I started playing with him where I had this duality where I was playing with Peter Erskine, like I'm standing in the place where Jaco and Mark Johnson and Jimmy Johnson, Miroslav Vitus, all these other players have stood next to him doing this thing and thought, holy crap, I can't compete with those guys. What am I doing here? So there's that little process in my mind, back of my mind. But there's also like, oh man, I really don't want to disappoint Uncle Pete. I don't want to send him home from this tour thinking, maybe I should have called,
right,
any of his buddies in LA. So it was an interesting thing, and again, it was one of those moments where I realized worrying about that doesn't do anything for me.
Sure.
Let me just focus on learning the music, keeping my head clear, and doing the best job I can. And if that's not good enough, then at least I gave it everything I had.
Right.
And it kept being good enough. We've worked together quite a bit in quite a few different instances over the years.
I've never gotten to meet your uncle, but I used to watch every video that would come out. I read all of his articles, and he seemed so approachable. He seemed like a teddy bear. I imagine him as Uncle Pete, because he just seems like a real sweetheart of a guy.
He is.
This is going to be funny because I never set anybody up with this before the conversation, but I always love to know about people's guilty pleasures, right? You've had such a wide variety of music interests. It doesn't have to be musical, but I'm always interested to know, like, what would I see you've got more friends here. Mike Stevens says, hey.
Great trumpet player.
What would your friends be surprised to know that you might have in your iPod or that you might listen to as a guilty pleasure?
Yeah, I listen to everything. I can't even think. I will throw on. I'm just as likely to throw on Chick Corea as I am Jeff Buckley, as I am Keisha in the car when I'm driving by myself. When something's good, it's good. Honestly, I've been lately trying to get back into music more, because for so long, everything I did, thought, and considered was music, and I got kind of burnt out, and I found myself not able to listen for pleasure anymore. Because it's just I couldn't actively listen to music. I couldn't just let it be in the background, and so I kind of tuned out for a while, and just those podcasts and NPR pretty much 24/7 if there was something going, or just driving in silence was a big thing. Right. Lately, I've been trying to get back into music. And, an interesting thing I've always tried to figure out about myself, and I don't think this is unique to me, but I've never I've been able to understand why this is. The music I listen to is not the music I necessarily enjoy playing, and both of those are completely different from the music that I write.
Really? Okay.
I've never been able to understand where that disconnect is. But when I'm listening to music, I either tend to listen to kind of atmospheric and melodic Northern European jazz, like high-minded contemporary jazz, or just straight up like lettuce, dumpster funk.
Oh yeah, okay, nice
groove stuff.
Yeah,
one or the other. Those are kind of my happy places. And
I picture you playing that stuff though too. Both, I'm glad that Mike Stevens says to plug the album. We're gonna get there, Mike. In this moment, I do want to talk about that. I mean, the lineup is killer. Musically, man, it's a cool departure from stuff that I've heard you do in the past too. it really is an atmospheric record in a big way too.
Yeah, there's a couple of ideas behind what this album came to be. One was I always had a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for my first record, which was a trio record with Ramsey Embeck and Reinhardt.
Nice.
And a part of me, even though there wasn't an original song on there, and the next two were original albums, a part of me always thought that was my favorite record. I just love the piano trio format so much. And this album came about after Charlie, Greg, and I did a streaming thing at the 1905. And I think it was the first time that we'd ever actually play it as a trio.
Really? On stage?
Okay. Yeah, I played with both of them in different groups and doing different things, but we never actually just did a thing like that. And then I had a gig. I got asked to play the bass bash at NAMM 2020, so I brought those guys and we did that. And we're like, we got to record an album. And of course, we were supposed to record in April, so that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it was always in the back of my mind. And then I said, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just get together and do it. No rehearsal. We recorded everything in one day.
Really?
Yeah, it's just kind of first and second takes for the most part.
At the 1905?
No, actually, this album was recorded at Greg's house.
Oh, really?
He engineered it.
Oh my God! Wow.
He mixed and mastered it. Yeah, we did it totally in house. And I was ready. If it didn't sound right to me, I was going to ship it off to somebody and say, okay, make this sound good. And if it didn't work, I was like, okay, at least we had fun playing. But it wound up sounding so good. I'm thrilled with it.
It sounds organic. That's what I really like about it, man. I think it would be easy if you went and shipped that off somewhere for it to sound overproduced and polished, and it does. It feels really natural and organic, So you can hear breaths in there, which is cool.
I told Greg when he was mixing it that's what I was going for. I mean, I really wanted to capture, it's called In This Moment. I really just wanted to capture that we were three guys who really miss playing together.
Yeah.
And we just got together and said, let's just do it. Let's play, let's record it. And it is what it is, warts and all. I've never been afraid to just kind of lay it out there and say, this is where I am right now. Here it is.
It's healthy to do that, right? Because you can look back. You said that you look back at some of your pre-Peter Erskine input, and then after, you could hear growth and a maturation, right? In your playing. Yeah. But hearing maybe stuff that you recorded early on or stuff that you played early on was potentially, I guess, dangerous, right? You may have taken more risks back then because you're just less structured. I don't know. I'm speculating. Did you feel that you were that way a little bit?
Little bit. I think more than anything, I had what I've come to call diarrhea fingers. Mostly because it all came from a place of insecurity, though.
Okay.
I was so worried about not sounding good that I was always judging what I played, and so nothing ever sounded good. So I was always searching for something else. So the entire time I was playing, what I was playing was already like, that's crap, next thing, so I just never stopped running. And I would hide behind the speed too. So it's like, well, if I play it fast, the bad notes won't last as long.
Well, you get more of them, right? You get more good notes, right?
Exactly.
It's the quota, right? So if you get like 70% good notes and you play 1,000 notes a minute, right? Then
exactly, you do all right. Yeah, these days, when I practice, it's mostly me throwing on a set of changes as a ballad and practicing playing slow, sparse melodies, just trying to create nice, simple melodic statements and putting a period on the end of the sentence, and then another sentence that relates to that, and forming paragraphs. I can't play as fast as I used to, but I think my melodic content is likely better.
Don't you think that's a little bit more, appropriate for
me,
like digestible music? Well, there are certainly a handful of people out there that want to hear fast notes, whether it be rock or jazz or, the Olympic style playing, right? But I think it's more enjoyable. You can sit through a whole night of something melodic and composed. I was thinking about a life-changing moment for me, and you may be able to relate to this. You talked about being a rock guy and not the jazz thing. I grew up in Montana in the woods in this cabin, right? So I just wanted to rock, man. I had a long mullet, and I just I wanted to move to Hollywood and be a rocker. And my dad was at sax. He still plays sax and clarinet, but he was in a Dixieland band. He was a jazz player.
Nice.
And he took me to this show with another piano trio. This guy Chick Corea and and Dave Weckl, John Patitucci, the acoustic band. And I was 16 or 17. It was right about the time I turned 17, and I was playing these gigs, these rock gigs, and I'd never heard anything like it. Blew my mind. I freaked out, and I became like the biggest stalker groupie, right? I raced backstage, and I had to go talk to them because I wanted to know about this language they were speaking. I'd never heard anything like this, you know, and I'd certainly never seen anything like that. And I was blown away by how approachable Weckl was. You know, I knew nothing about them personally, right? I met
sweetheart.
He was unbelievable, right? I mean, the fact that he took time backstage, like I said, I was this teenage kid, right? And my dad had to come and talk his way back to come get me because I'm back just chatting with him. And Dave invited me back to the hotel. We hung out in the lounge, and he just talked to me for like probably 2 hours.
Wow.
I just found this letter that he wrote to me with that, where he talked about electronics and about the importance of about longevity. If you want to do this thing for a career, he said. I remember him asking me, do you party? This is like 1987. And I was like, man, no, dude. He goes, no. I was just going to ask you. Yeah, because if you want to do this for a career, longevity wise, man, there's no way if you're partying, you're going to be able to do this in your 30s and 40s, you know? And I thought he was asking if I wanted to, you know,
right.
but I reminded him about that a couple of years ago at the NAMM show. I brought my son, who was the same age as I was when I first met Dave, and I saw him do a lecture at QSC. He didn't remember the conversation we had, but I told him how it was really impressionable. You know, I was impressionable at that point. It changed my life. I look at comments that people make after having met you, and it's like that influence. It's really cool to see how inspired people get from seeing you and meeting you and reading about your books and education. I saw, who was this that said, back in the chat here, Jack Hoffinger says, that video of yours, it stuck with me. Thanks for being such a great educator and inspirer. Nice. Is that important to you to kind of feel like you have an impact on people?
Absolutely. It's been kind of one of my driving forces, especially this past year, you know, at a time where I think a lot of us need support of some kind. Everybody's struggling on some level, whether it's financial or emotional or, you know, physical, whatever it is. It's a large part of the reason I started, we've mentioned it, we talked about it, the baseeducation.com site I started. You know, initially, of course, that was me pivoting. The pandemic hit for me a little bit earlier because I was supposed to be in Asia mid-February through mid-March. Oh. So I had that trip canceled before everything else got canceled here. So that was me kind of pivoting professionally. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I know my calendar just got cleared for the entire year, basically. So I've had this idea. I had thought of this like a dozen years ago, and I just never had the time, or I was a little intimidated by the scope and breadth of the project too. But I said, let's do it. So, you know, it was partially a financial, like, okay, here's another job. Let me do this. But it very much became, and my relationship with it now is very much one of support for the community and for learners. I have a community built into the website, and I spend most of my time, at this point, the content there is pretty robust. I spend a lot of time just dialoguing with musicians one-on-one or in group threads, but also emailing one-on-one, trying to help learners and kind of trying to be the teacher I always wished I had at certain points in my development, and be available for anybody and everybody there to try and support the community as a whole. So that's always been kind of the most important thing to me.
How do you find time to teach besides that then, if you're that involved?
You know, I don't, it's a little bit all consuming, but I'm cool with it. You know, I will, you know, when I need to teach, I teach. And then in between, I catch up on messages and look at comments in the community, and I respond to everybody, and I do the thing. And it's, you know, sometimes I'm still there at 1 a.m. because a few more came through, and I go for it. But it's just, you know, a little bit OCD. I can't I can't let things sit in my mental to-do folder. But it keeps me engaged and it makes me feel good. So I mean, it actually kind of energizes me. It's not so much an energy flow. So it's reciprocal.
You think some of that kind of became more important to you, or at least it felt more comfortable after you had this transformational shift in your health?
I don't know. I mean, emotionally speaking, the only change I can point to and say, yeah, that's better, is just the overall confidence. When I was at my peak with the weight, it was insidious. It was like a little dark spot in the back of my mind. I didn't always know was there, but there was a part of me that was always a little bit disappointed in myself and a little bit down on myself and just kind of feeling less worthy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, do you find that sometimes when you're having conversations with young students on the base education site that they kind of talk about those insecurities, and maybe you can weigh in not just musically, but you can talk about some of those things too to improve their.
Absolutely, yeah. I have a lot of experience with fear-based playing and insecure personality. I mean, I was a only kid and we moved every couple of years when I was growing up, so I never had a lot of friends. I was like socially awkward for a long time in high school, and I always had little insecurities that took me a while to get over, and through working through all of those issues, either personally or musically, I'm always very happy to try and help steer somebody away or through that forest in whatever way I can.
That's a beautiful thing, man. Was Uncle Peter kind of helpful in that way for you too as you were growing up?
Not on a day-to-day.
Yeah.
Really, it's just I was always a very insular kind of person. It's funny. I had a lot of instances in high school where somebody would tell me that they were, previously they were always intimidated by me because they thought I was so cool, because I was just always kind of chilling, back and doing a thing. And I was like, oh, that's hilarious, because actually what's going through my mind is all these people think I'm a huge dork. What am I doing here? Can I get a, So it was always kind of an internal dialogue I had with myself that nobody was ever really aware of. And I never really talked about it with anybody until later in life, after I'd realized kind of where I was with it all.
When did you feel like you changed?
In my 20s, I started to feel like I was discovering a sense of who I was and realizing that I had value. Musically speaking, that didn't really happen until my 30s.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking of Damian Erskine going back to class reunions, right? When all those people that you thought you were geeky or dorky, and you go back and they say, oh, the legend, he's back. And we always knew that you were going to be huge, Damian. I've seen those types. Man, like if anyone were to have any doubt about your abilities or your coolness, I think they just need to hear you play, man. I was going to have you play before, but if you're cool with it, I'm sure everybody in this chat has been blessed to hear Damian on stage or off. But
I played with a lot of these people.
Yeah, I'll bet you have. Yeah, I would just love. I'm not sure what you want to play, man. It'd be great if you want to play. We talked about having this great escape from the rest of the world today. Where we could just hang and catch up and talk about positive stuff and not worry about all the crap that's out there. So I'm gonna take myself off screen and I'm just going to escape a little bit in you as we enjoy some of your playing. Is that cool?
Sure. I have no idea what I'm going to play either. But actually, part of my audio setup is that I'm running through the bass through Logic.
Okay.
And I actually have a session up here that has a drum loop. I could just play to that.
Awesome. Yeah. Another replacement for drummers. Great.
Somebody hooked me up. One of the guys at Loop Loft hooked me up with their drum loops.
Nice.
And there's some great stuff in there. Man, it's great for just practicing at home. So I forget which one this is. I'm just going to play to something. I have no idea what I'm going to play. This is a part of me feeling comfortable with myself and just laying it out there, warts and all. Practice what I preach.
Love it. All right. Here it goes, ladies and gentlemen. Damian Erskine. Take it away, buddy.
Let's see what this is. Let me know if this sounds all right on your end. It's a little distorted for me.
Oh, no, it sounds great here, man.
Okay. I just got done talking about how I don't play too much anymore, and then I
no, there was a beautiful mix of melodic, and you had some notes in there. Okay, so for those of us that are maybe percussion inclined and drummer, because you had that really cool triplet pattern there that you do with there's like a plucking pattern where you're. Are you using your pointer and your middle finger along with your bass to play that?
Oh, that's that's one of my little. Actually, my first book was like a whole bunch of plucking techniques that I derived from sticking patterns.
Really? Okay.
Basically, like I started perceiving things. It's like, oh, it's just kind of like a drum rudiment, like a 3-stroke roll, and I started experimenting with ideas like that. And that was one of my 4-stroke rolls.
Can you show me that again?
Yeah, so that's just me hitting an open string, okay, hammering a note, and then plucking twice.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, okay.
So I think I was just doing 16th notes. But that's kind of nice when you do a 4-stroke pattern in triplets too. You know, something like that.
Yeah, man. God, I love watching you play, man. I so miss it. Mike Stevens has he's actually sounded out your piece like
he knows it like well.
Parker Van Acker out there wants to know what kind of bass that is. You want to pimp your stuff real quick?
Yeah, this is a Schold design. Pete Schold, a guy in Ohio, little one-man shop. He builds all my stuff. He's been my dude. I met him on the road. I was out with Tony Furtado, and he was living in Dallas at the time, and he came to a show, and we started hanging, and he just builds the most phenomenal stuff, and he's excels at understanding what you actually want out of an instrument.
Really?
Especially, he knows how to speak. Well, he's an old Vegas bass player. You know, he used to make his living playing bass, so he understands all my dumb stuff when I don't know how to talk technically about the instrument. You know, I say I want it to sound like, you know, like chocolate, you know, but kind of like raindrops, but, you know, like round, but not, you know, pointy, but not too pointy. And he's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And he knows how to translate that into wood combinations. And
I can actually hear all of those things. And you're playing chocolate, raindrops, pointy, but not too pointy. Yeah, round.
See, he nailed it.
Yeah, he did. And it's a beautiful bass too. I mean, it really just, it looks elegant. And
I love this thing. This is nothing like his normal models. Actually, I was on the road and passing through town, and I swung into a shop, and he had built himself basically this bass, just because he wanted something that was just his, not one of his models, nothing like that. And I was in his shop, and we're just dorking around and playing all kinds of stuff. And I was like, "Oh wait, let me check out your bass." And I was like, "Okay, I kind of need one of these now. Can you do this?"
Oh no! So how much customization then did you do for that for you?
Nothing.
Really?
Yeah. He's changed a few things because he knows the way I play now. So he said, "I'm going to make you your version of my bass." It's a little bit narrower spacing than he uses. I like 16.5 millimeter, and he's more of a 17.5 kind of guy. And he changed some of the woods and stuff. And different electronics. I like passive electronics. Even my 6 strings are passive.
Okay.
And so it's just volume, tone, and volume, tone, tone. Most of my basses are volume, volume, tone, but like very simple electronics, no batteries.
Okay. Nice, man. You I know that you've got a bunch of endorsements, you know, so you want to talk a little bit about some of the other gear you play?
Yeah, I play Scholl basses. I've been with Aguilar Amplification for damn near ever. Okay. I've been with them since I don't know, maybe around 2000 or so, maybe a little later. I love their stuff, they're great with the tour support too. And they have backline all over the planet, so they've been wonderful. And I love their amps because I can just plug in and play. I don't need to fiddle with anything. It's just I take this bass, I plug it into an Aguilar rig, and I don't have to touch the EQ or anything. You know, I might bip things a little bit depending on the room I'm in, but it just sounds good. D'Addario Strings, been with them for a good 15 plus years. Groove Gear, I was the first official Groove Gear artist.
I remember you pimping them a little bit on social media.
Their very first thing was a cart.
Okay.
And I was one of the first guys to get the cart. They came to a gig I had in LA, and they brought a cart, and we immediately took it and threw it in the van and used it for the rest of the gig, and that thing was great. It was version 1.0. Now they have it's a hell of a lot better and different than it used to be. And they also, I had invented for myself a duo strap, double strap system that I kind of came up with after a tour playing a 6-string where my hand kept going numb because I was pinching a nerve. And so I invented this thing for myself, and they helped me turn that into they approached me and asked if we could turn that into an actual product.
Really?
For them. So we have the co-own the patent on the duo strap.
And that's actually part of the Groove Gear company?
Yeah, it's in their catalog of products.
Right on.
This was another Groove Gear strap I used, but I just used the single neoprene spongy version for my light. You know, bass doesn't weigh anything, so I don't need both straps. And let's see, who else? MXR pedals, and I know I'm going to forget somebody important that I bang myself on the head for later.
Well, you know what? You talked about pedals. I was just thinking about the last time I got to watch you play in person was at an amp show. You were playing the Alfred booth, that tiny booth with Marco Miniman on drums. And
Marco Djordjevic.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's right. Djordjevic. Not Miniman, who was also an amazing drummer. But Djordjevic and who else was there? It was a trio.
Yeah, it was damn it.
Sorry,
I'm not a smart man.
No.
Horn player from Orange County. God, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Wonderful player.
It blew my mind.
Old buddy of Marco's. I think they've been playing together since college. And yeah, we were kind of the West Coast version of his trio. Marco lives in New York. And and if I'm not sure we've done that Alfred booth a few times. Did you catch the one with Matthew Garrison while he came and played with us as well?
No.
That was pretty badass.
All I remember, you told me about where you're playing, and I remember walking around looking for the stage, and then I get around the corner and I see that the booth is about the size of this production room right here. There were like, it was probably 8 by 8, and you got a drum kit in there and bass and horn player, but it made more noise than any other booth there at NAMM show, and it blew my mind, like the chops and the listening. There was a lot of listening going on, which is cool. So
yeah, he's an incredible drummer. That's a fun gig. That was kind of a once a year thing. Whenever he came to LA for NAMM, I would be at NAMM, and we'd book a little run around it, and that was always a real treat for me.
You missing it this year?
Yes and no. I kind of got a little burned out on NAMM. Mm-hmm. Last year when I played the Bass Bash, I actually didn't go to the NAMM show at all.
Just did the Bass Bash and split?
Yep, I would take some hikes and walked on the beach and spent my days chilling, and then while the other guys went to NAMM, okay. I was like, I can't, it wears me out too much. It's too loud, too many people.
As we get older.
Yeah, it's funny because, I was so excited. It was like if only I could get to NAMM, that was my big dream for the longest time. And then after you go, 10 years in a row, you're like, I don't know if I could ever come back here. This is awful.
Yeah. I've had that conversation with Jennifer quite a bit. So if you're a hiker, do you hit the canyons around LA?
Yeah, I have a couple. I use an app called All Trails, and I have a handful of trails that I have favorited depending on which town I'm in and where I'm at.
That's a good one, man. There are a couple in Topanga that I've actually caught with some friends of mine as well, and but they're doing that canyon hike quite often in that heat. It's tough for me to pull it off when I'm down there, but I love it. What's your favorite beach down there? What's the go-to?
I just go to whichever one is closest to me. I used to live in Venice, so there's a part of me that always kind of just loves strolling that, Santa Monica Pier and all that stuff down there.
Yeah.
Just because the people watching is so good. But I mean, when I'm staying in Long Beach, I'll just go to I just kind of go to whatever beach is closest to wherever I am. And especially since I've moved to Oregon, I've come to appreciate a beach where you don't need your jacket. So.
Right. Oh man, yeah. The seasonal affective disorder thing is kind of a real deal. I didn't realize how much it impacts you until you have 30 days straight of rain, right? But
yeah,
I took more time than I wanted to here, but I just could talk to you all flipping day.
I know.
I wanted to ask you, we can wrap it up. I want you to put together your dream lineup. Give me maybe a rock lineup and then a jazz lineup.
Oh,
living or dead, doesn't matter.
Wow. Like to play with or just to watch?
Yeah, at your level, I think to play with. For my level, just to watch.
Oh, man.
Yeah, if you could play with anybody.
If I could play with anybody, honestly, there's a handful of guys on my bucket list. The drummers that immediately come to mind are Adam Deitch. I've just been such a huge fan of his for so long, and Gene Lake.
Oh wow, okay.
I discovered him in college, and I've lost my mind so many times thanks to him. Whether it's Screaming Headless Torsos or he had a band with John Medeski that was crazy. Everything he's done. Steve Coleman and the Five Elements. Dude's just got such a feel, such pocket. Oh man, that's really hard. If I could still play drums like I used to,
yeah,
I would love to just play just a couple of tunes with either Pantera or Slayer, like early Pantera, or just sit in with a tune on Slayer. I used to do a few Slayer covers. I loved the Slayer stuff. Slayer was kind of my thing.
If you and I could get together and just do Cowboys from Hell, though, that's
right.
That one's in my top 10 of all time records. Right?
I'll still throw that on. I'll still throw on Rain and Blood too. I finally saw Slayer for the first time, maybe 2 years ago.
Was Bostaff playing drums?
I don't know who was playing drums. I forget the guy's name.
It wasn't Paul Bostaff.
It was one of those tours. It was Napalm Death. Slayer, Anthrax, Testament, I used to be all about all of those bands.
Yeah.
And God, there's a couple more I'm blanking out, but it was one of those kind of like mega
Right.
concerts with Slayer headlining, and that was wonderful.
Did you lose your mind again? Did you just go right back to
I was right back at it.
17-year-old Damian Erskine?
Yeah, and I was not the only one because I was surrounded by a bunch of older dudes, look like they sell insurance for a living with their kids, just like bored as hell, but they're like dads are like screaming the lyrics to Rain and Blood or something.
You've got the Scott Ian thing going on right here, which is nice
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Yes, I can see where your inspiration's from.
Yeah.
I would imagine some of the jazz cats here are impressed with your appreciation for the metal. But
Oh yeah, one of my favorite concerts of all time was Sacred Reich and Pantera at a little club in New York.
wow, yeah. What era was that for Pantera?
That was, well, let me see. The year was probably like 91 or 92.
Yeah, all right. So strong, Far Beyond Driven.
Yeah, Far Beyond Driven, which is such a good album.
So good, man. Good friends and a bottle of pills. We could just
Yeah.
I did not think we were gonna have this conversation on this show, but
Right.
I'm gonna have to pull it out again, man. Like, yeah. So between Far Beyond Driven and Cowboys, which is your favorite record?
Oh, that's tough. I loved Far Beyond Driven, but Cowboys was my discovery. Like that was my entrance into Pantera, so it always has a little bit of a special place in my heart.
God, that's beautiful, man. There's the soundbite. For Chick Corea, electric or acoustic band?
Acoustic.
Oh yeah, nice, man.
Yeah, I mean they're both smoking.
Yeah.
But the acoustic is the way. Oh, it's just having played a lot of those tunes with other people. I know how hard those tunes are to navigate, and the way that it's just so effortless and musical. And Patitucci is inconceivably good. Weckl is inconceivably good. I've gotten to play with him briefly a couple of times.
Really?
Well, I was gigging with the Buddy Rich All-Star Big Alumni Band.
What?
For quite a while. Yeah, for a while. I would do a lot of the gigs in LA and in the general area. I did a few in Texas and things. But whenever we would play Catalinas in LA, if Weckl was in town, he would come and he would always sit in because he loves that stuff. He told me he would just play that stuff all year long if he could. So I've gotten to do a couple of those tunes with him on drums.
Wow, that's cool. That's bucket list for most people.
That was bucket list for me. I was like a little kid at Christmas, and I couldn't believe how, even if he's just ride cymbal and 2 and 4 on the hi-hat, like it felt like as soon as he started playing, everything just went, it just like the music, the whole band just got tighter, and it was like his presence on the drums. Somebody mentioned in the chat thread the leading from behind, and he is masterful. His feel, everything about him is incredible.
It's interesting because in the the drum circles, Vinny really gets so much attention, and of course, I mean, rightfully so. But between those two, especially when you go way back to the Modern Drummer Festival video, right, where it's Vinny and Weckl and Gad on drums, and they're 3 completely different drummers. And I remember at that point, right, that came out when I was 15, 16 years old, being blown away by how fast Vinny was and how like the Latin part of Weckl's stuff was blowing my mind, but the musical part of Gad was so surprising to me. When I listen to it now, I think what a genius he is and was right at that point. Where
he's so compositional in his approach.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, all 3 of those guys, though, it's tough to imagine, like now, because social media has sort of a whole new generation of millions of amazing players, right? But you don't have the icons at that level anymore, right?
Right. Well, everybody focuses on the chops. There's we can go down the gospel chops rabbit hole, and there's some like phenomenal technicians like you can't believe. But then you hear Gad play a solo, and there's control, there's precision, there's chops, but it's music.
Yeah,
he's playing music. Same with Weckl and Vinny. That's the thing that's that extra thing.
Yeah.
That makes somebody an icon versus just a phenomenal technician.
That's right, man. God, buddy, when you get to your last breath, because I ask people about legacy, like what they want to be known for. when I look at your playing, when I've played on stage with you, when I look at what you've done in terms of a career, I mean, I see a tremendous amount of contribution, to your craft and also to your community. What do you kind of feel like you would love your legacy to be?
That's interesting. I had a similar conversation with John Nastos on the way from we carpooled to a gig somewhere, and we were talking about how you want to be, how would you want to be remembered? It's like thinking about that now, so we can conceive of how to live. And yeah, I think and my answer at the time to him was, I just want people to think I was a solid dude, reliable, cool, hang, not pretentious, none of that. But I think you phrased it well. I just think I would love to people to say, he contributed well with the time he had. He left a mark on his musical community.
I see it happening. You know what, man? There's a common thread, I think, from friends that I've had on the show. That way, I am so inspired. Really, you've done so much to not just musically, man. I really just admire who you are, what you've done with yourself, bettering yourself, physically and emotionally, and then you share it. It's a good thing, especially now. We all need the positivity.
We all need the positivity now. And thank you, brother. I really appreciate that.
And I really appreciate your time. Thank Coco for sharing you with me for a little more than I had even hoped to have. So if people aren't already hip to this, they can go to baseeducation.com. Let me put that link back up here again. If you're interested, yeah, boom. We got baseeducation.com and also Damian Erskine. So if you can look at his personal site, you can see the schedule that's upcoming when they get more gigs, hopefully more streaming gigs. You got something coming up this weekend, right?
I do. Tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
From 7 to 9 Pacific here in Oregon, playing with it's kind of a CD release.
Okay.
Album release for my gig, playing with Charlie and Greg at the 1905, streaming through Left Door streaming.
Okay. And do you have a link to that on your website?
I do not, but on all of my Facebooks and Instagrams and all of that, people can just look for Left Door streaming on YouTube or Facebook and find it, or go to my social media, and it'll all be there.
Man, I can't thank you enough for being here. Guys, if you're watching this, I would love it if you subscribe to this channel so that you can watch an archive of this video. I'll have it up on accesskevin.com later this afternoon, and you can see a bunch of other episodes, about 150 of other episodes, and great players coming up here again. But man, there's none better than this awesome time with Damian Erskine. Thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate it, and thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Kevin. It's so good to talk and chat again, and thank you, everybody. Man, so many people I miss. I can't wait till this is over so I can get back to hanging out with all these guys.
That's right. Yeah, that's right, man. Well, go check him out tomorrow night. Go hit Left Door Media, and you can see this streaming concert.
Right on.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Take care. We'll see you back tomorrow at 3 o'clock Pacific. It will be Kyle Baltus and 36 Crazy Fists.
Yeah.